5 seconds.
Hola a todos y todas. Hi everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Start the webinar organized by LIBER and LA Referencia. Vamos a empezar hoy en día este webinar orquestado por
We're
LIBER
going to start the seminar orchestrated.
100 participants registered, so you are coming. Nos alegramos de que estéis conectados. Tenemos casi 500 participantes inscritos. Toma de asientos.
So we're gonna get started. We're about to begin. Okay, she's coming back and forth. So.
Please choose your language channel. Para la traducción, elijan canal de su idioma. You can put your question during the webinar in the chat or in the Q&A box. We will take them for the speakers during the Q&A session. Haced vuestras preguntas en el chat y se las haremos a los ponentes durante la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. This webinar is recorded, and the presentation slides will be made available on Zenodo and the websites. Este webinario se grabará y las diapositivas de las presentaciones estarán disponibles en Zenodo y en los sitios web. Cualquier comportamiento fuera de lugar supondrá la exclusión inmediata.
Any out-of-place behavior will assume your immediate expulsion from the webinar.
Out-of-place behavior would lead to immediate exclusion for this webinar. So are we ready? ¿Estamos preparados? Hoy en día nos vemos para este webinar.
Good morning. We're here to talk transforming assessment of research, concrete advancement in open science in America and Europe.
There's a webinar called Making Research Assessment a Reality, showcasing concrete open science advancements in Latin America and Europe. And we will be starting with a few words from the La Referencia president, Andrea Mora Campos, and LIBER vice president, Yanis Tsakonas. Vamos a empezar con unas palabras de introducción por la presidente de La Referencia, Andrea Mora Campos, y del vicepresidente de LIBER, Yanis Tsakonas. Andrea, over to you.
Gracias, Cecil. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas. Soy Andrea Mora.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Mora. I'm the president of La Referencia. We're very happy to have you here in this very important space for the current situation of science assessment, which is also a necessary transformation for all regions in the world. From La Referencia and LIBER, we'd like to thank for the participation of our speakers as well as the participants, and we hope this space is beneficial to you all. Janice, over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning to our Latin American colleagues. Good afternoon to the European colleagues. Good evening to anyone else who is in other time zones. Thank you very much for attending this seminar that LIBER jointly organizes with LA Referencia. The matter of research assessment is very critical for the progress of open science, and we are mostly interested in the growth of open science in our continent. However, research assessment is a global issue and is dependent on many factors, including equity and visibility, academic freedom, and social contribution. To this end, we have the strong belief that research libraries have a lot to offer too. Our LIBER members have the capacity, knowledge, and interest to promote alternative paradigms of research assessment that respect the particular conditions of disciplines and cultures. We explore the potential of open infrastructures that broaden the data and information that is considered in decision-making. We help our institutions to shape policies that include diverse research practices. We challenge the use of traditional tools and metrics that neglect or even oppress several types of research outputs. We develop services that work for the benefit of our researchers and of our societies. We are joining our forces and we are uniting our voice with our colleagues from all around the globe, and we commit to continue working with them to make open science the default paradigm. Thank you very much, and over again to you, Cecile.
Vamos a empezar con Eva Méndez de
So
Coara.
let's begin with Eva Méndez.
From Coara. You will introduce
De-
yourself and that will be over to you. Te vas a presentar, Eva, y te escuchamos.
Okay, thank you very much. For my screen, I think I know a lot of the people, friends, my colleagues in Latin America, and for those that you don't know, Eva Méndez. I'm a faculty member in University Carlos III of Madrid in Library and Information Science. And I am now in sabbatical leave in research stay in Australia, in Perth, working with COKI, with Coalition of Open Knowledge Institutions, 14 Open Knowledge Institutions. So I'm very happy to be part of this meeting, to be present from the Global South in the Global South. What I want to share with you today, I'm assuming that you are seeing my slides in this screen. Yeah. What I'm going to share to you today is what is going on in Coara. I'm assuming that everybody in the audience of this talk, they haven't reading at least the agreement, even if you sign it or you're not. And of course, some of you have heard me talking about this many times, so you will notice some slides that they are familiar, or even my words that they are familiar, because they are things that I have always in my wording that is part of that. Well, coming back to Coara, I will not introduce Coara, but I will just give a bit of a story to understand where we are now and where we come from. Coara was adopted in 2023. We create the coalition on the 1st of December. In 2022, we create the coalition, but in 2023 has been the development of the coalition. But this year it has been also the celebration of many other issues around open science. We have been messing around with research evaluation for 10 years. Dora was 10th birthday was in 2023 too. RDA, the Research Data Alliance that Francois will be representing in this meeting afterwards, has also 10 years. Also 10 years of Zenodo, the open access repository for the homeless people, those people that they don't have a repository, they can always share their knowledge and their outcomes in Zenodo. 10 years of different alternative of research publishing, F1000, for example, which is one of the contractors that is behind the Open Research Europe, and 10 years of other conferences, other initiatives. We have been messing around with research assessment, research reproducibility, research evaluation, and open science as a huge concept for a long time. What Coara tried to do is just going forward the declaration mode to the application mode. This is not 10 years ago, but it's 8 years ago, when in the Amsterdam Call for Action with the presidency of the Council in Europe, was in the Netherlands. We have this video that we end up saying, and you, what are you going to do? And every single of the speaker in this video, we mention that the cornerstone of open science was research evaluation. And the point is, okay, and you, what are you going to do? We were thinking about doing yet another declaration that is more than 100 declarations. The Barcelona declaration that I will refer afterwards a bit was published on the 16th of April and is the declaration 134 of all those declarations that they are around open science. And what I always say about open science, and you probably heard me saying this before, is that the declarations and recommendations are close to the sun. We all agree, and I heard very funny expression also in Uruguay. It's like saying hello to the flag that you have in Argentina and in Uruguay, in Colombia, that you say hello to the flag. We everybody are very keen on saying hello to the flag. We are very convinced of the principles, but then nothing happened. So COARA has this interest to go farther in the very iceberg of research system. What we see in the research system at the beginning is a lot of practices that really negatively affect the quality and impact of research, and also an affordable publication system. But underneath all these problems, it is a crazy 19th century, 20th century based mechanism of applying research evaluation based on impact factor and based on indicators publication based. This is not new. There are millions of approaches about doing different metrics, different rewards, next generation metrics. Last week was published the LERO report and next generation metrics led by Paul Waters, that is again and again saying the same things that we all agree about all of things. And there are many initiatives that continuously try to have a direction on the reform of the research assessment. From DORA 10 years ago until the very last Barcelona Declaration on open research information and open metadata to evaluate with open sources the indicators that are coming from open resources, not for those based on companies. The full commitments of COARA, if you are signatories of the agreement, you know them. If you know, probably you are absolutely aware of that. They are very aligned with all the principles of DORA and all the initiatives around, including new initiatives in the United States and also with FOLEC that Laura will just speak about afterwards, is trying to recognize diversity of contributions, not only quantitative evaluation, use the indicators in a responsible manner, and avoiding the use of rankings that they are usually biased and they are trying to prevail the excellence of the North European, of the North countries where European has the leadership. But think about the coalition is what we have been developing in the last year. What COARA has been doing this year and in the steering board of COARA, just having in our hands the birth of a coalition of a new bottom-up initiative that is based on institutional approaches to giving a step forward to change or to advance in research assessment. And in this year, we have been some figures that we are augmenting the members. We have now 723 signatories, a bit more because we have been evaluating last week new memberships. And this is just figures. It's not nothing that it is related with the amount of people that they have signed the agreement. Here you have the membership by country, where Spain, Italy, Poland, and France are the countries that they have more signatories, apart of those that they are European or global organizations that they are included not in a particular country. For example, REA is a signatory of COARA, but is global. So this is just a peek of how is the distribution. You can see that anyhow, the most of the evolution of the coalition is more European oriented, and we want to have everybody on board. Science is global, and we cannot make a change that is significant enough if we don't have the global South on board. We need Latin America, we need Central America, we need Latin American countries, we need Africans, we need the United States, we need everybody on board. We have to be capable to create a practical system that is better than the one that we have now and is updated with the technologies and with the initiatives that we have been dealing with in the last 20 years since the Budapest Declaration. Well, another thing that we have been doing in this last year in the evaluation of research is creating nuclear debate groups that they can exchange knowledge and mutual learning to discuss different issues that they are completely relevant for research evaluation. This is what we call the working groups, that they are like communities of practice to identify and to work on different aspects that they are really relevant for the reform of the assessment. Just to have a pick of these kind of working groups, we have different groups, some of them focusing on open infrastructures for responsible research, multilingualism, recognizing and rewarding peer review, improving practices of research assessment of research proposals, global frameworks for different fields, and we have also different communities approaching not only a topic, but approaching the research assessment as a whole, but with the glasses of a specific kind of researcher, which is a case of the early and mid-career researchers that they want to have a say on how the current system affects their career and how the new system should be able to change this bias. And of course, ethical aspect, responsible metrics and indicators. I'm always happy that this working group is established, because we cannot blame people to use impact factor if we don't provide them with new responsible metrics and with new open infrastructures that they are alternative of what it is already in place. This is some of the activities of the highlights of the working group so far. And so we have created another mechanism to communities, which is the national chapters. We might even consider that in Latin America, you can even create a regional chapter, or Portuguese or Brazil can join the Portuguese chapter, and Latin America Spanish speakers can join the Spanish. I don't know, but it's a way to try to put people together to be more easily working on these topics. At a national level makes more sense than at a linguistic level or a regional level, because usually the funding and the research evaluation constraints happen to be at the national level. It's not the same to do a research or evaluate research in Argentina that in Chile, that in Dominican Republic, or in the Caribbean. You have always to have a glue with the national policies that they can allow to go a step forward. And these national chapters are going to legitimize the national members to do changes at the national level. So I will recommend, it's something that we should talk further, but I will recommend to make national chapters instead of regional or linguistic chapters. That will make sense for the glue of connecting people. Those are the national chapters so far, that they are all in Europe. And what we really want to do this in this approach, the status quo that COARA, the coalition, is now, we want to connect the dots. We want to be sure that all the contributions in COARA are aligned, the national chapters, the working groups, the plans for action that they have different institutions, and also being connected with other initiatives, our sister initiatives, as they are DORA and FOLEC. For example, we have invited FOLEC also to be part of the observers of the COARA. We have to work in the same direction. And also we have created synergies with the EOS, with the European Open Science Cloud, which is this meta infrastructure of European data and outputs that they have probably a spot to evolve in their research assessment, and also because the European Open Science Cloud is very well funded by the European Commission, and we can just put some research money there to do alternative infrastructures that they are focusing on services on research assessment. And of course, we want to engage and grow internationally. It's what I said before, and it's my most important message today is that we need this to be really global. Another thing that happened in this last year is that we have these action plans that is the roadmap of each institution that they have then to create a path to change the way they apply the QARA principles. So far, this morning we have 39 action plans, but we expect that in the following, the rest of the year, we will have many because the European Commission, through the QARA Boost project, which is the funded project, has launched the cascading funding up to 60,000 euros per member to create these action plans and to adapt the scenario at an institutional level to make this happen. So if you are a member or you plan to be a member, be aware that you can have also an economical boost to help you to develop these action plans. And of course, you can be just a signatory or you can be a member. This is something that we maintain still. I'm not sure if it is a good idea because sometimes it's a bit crazy to have different figures for member as signatories. But the members are the people that they belong to the community. The signatories are those that they are aware of the agreement. They are applying the agreement in their own institution, but they don't mingle with the community of national chapters, working groups, and active activity that we suppose to be in part of a bottom-up community. Also, we are creating, we want to have it available soon, QARA support budgets, because they are people that they cannot be members themselves, but they can be supporters, because since this is very based at institutional high level, it could be a part of an institution that they are supporters, even if their own institution is not a member of the coalition. For example, a library in the university could be supporter of QARA, even if the university is not a member. This is just a toast to the sun, but it's a symbol to say, I'm there, I'm aware of this. And let me just have in the last 2 minutes a couple of words about the role that libraries play in this evaluation game. I just picked the book from Emanuel Kulczycki, which is a researcher, brilliant researcher from Poland, that he has very much thinking that I'm very much aligned with that. At the point that when I was reading the book, I was taking pictures of the book. And he said that always the current system of research, which is one of the sentences I remember by heart, thinking on Latin America, the current research evaluation system always affect negatively to those that they are weaker in the system, which is the early career researchers and the not so wealthy countries. So this is something that we have to consider in the light of the UNESCO principles, thinking about equity. That is something that when we are in Europe, sometimes we forget it. And also I want to have this thought about the libraries, because as you know, I'm a librarian by training. I think that the libraries are playing a role in this evaluation game, but they are only facilitators or supporters of this kind of change. And I always think that the motivators of will for the researcher, this is one of my favorite slides, is always based on money, grants, law. We have a new law to promote open science, open access, and it's applied. And also rankings. Rankings are a motivator of will for researchers. We all think that we don't like them, but at the end, you put things in order. Highly cited researchers are ranking. The most important universities, Shanghai ranking, look at the ranking of universities. Journal impact factor, ranking of publications. Rankings are almost everywhere, and they are damaging and biasing the real of the wealthy development of research. But there is another motivator of will, which is what I call seduction, which is something that is imposed by utility. It is imposed because it is easy, because we have a motivation to do it, and because we have help to do it. This is the role of the libraries commit with the new system as a facilitator helping the change. And this is probably sounds familiar to you, that the librarians, they say that they cannot afford to keep paying the publishers. We cannot afford the APC trick, the read and publish and read agreements. They are not the solution. We need education to our researchers, because we know in the libraries, when a researcher comes at your door and say, oh, I want to be an open scientist, I have to pay for publish. To be an open scientist is not just to publish, to pay for publishing. It's sharing your data, it's sharing your information as soon as you can and as much as you can. And also a key issue, which is the reward system become a new system by seduction. And these librarians are part of this new thing. This is the typical scenario. And this is something that I want to underline just to finish my presentation, that happened also this year, which is the Barcelona Declaration that I mentioned before, that it was the last declaration on open science landscape. And it deals exactly what it is important for the libraries, which is the metadata. I always say that the metadata, they don't have an owner. The owner is the publication, is the intellectual property, shouldn't apply to the metadata. So if we share the metadata, we will have the control back again for the researchers and the research institutions to be capable to make open by default the research information, the information about research that will help us to evaluate in the open the new research system. And that's what it is in Coara, in the principle that we say we don't endorse and we don't promote commercial products. We want that every single data that we use, every single infrastructure that we use to implement Coara should be on the open. And this is a very important thing that is in the hands of the librarians, that maybe you have to abandon in the next 2 years the principles of that databases that you pay and be capable to use OpenAlex, for example. And also they are related projects that they are very much in favor of all this movement. Graspos, Opus, and Pathos, they are 3 projects funded by the European Commission that they are pushing over in the context of the European Open Science Cloud, or in the context of widening the European research area, that they are helping us to develop this scenario. And this is all from my side. Thank you very much, and I will be very happy to participate in the discussion afterwards. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Eva. We are shifting to Laura Rovelli. Laura, you are representing the Foro Latinoamericano sobre Evaluación Científica. Hi, Laura. You are representing Polek.
Hola, buenos días y muchas gracias por la invitación. Voy a compartir pantalla.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to be sharing my screen.
También les agradezco muchísimo.
Thank you so much to LIBER and La Referencia for this invitation to the Latin American Forum on Scientific Assessment of the Latin American Council of Social Sciences. And I particularly appreciate the possibility of doing it from a multilingual perspective and be able to speak in my language and get to different communities, north and south. In regards to the international initiatives, and going back to some issues mentioned in the previous presentation, we know that in the last few years, particularly in the last 12, we see a group of initiatives such as DORA, FOLEC, COARA, that promote this amendment in research assessment, aligning it to open science. We also have initiatives from different international bodies, such as the Global Research Council to improve evaluation, UNESCO itself, and the International Council of Research. In this framework, we also see recently the Declaration of Barcelona promoting scientific or research information from an open perspective, having a positive effect on assessment, given that it encourages evaluation processes globally and regionally to be considered for the drafting of indicators and a more qualitative assessment of research, the production of knowledge that is around in our region, for example, and internationally openly. So the components, the main components of responsible research assessment, because the term responsible we've been underscoring from different initiatives, such as the ones mentioned before. This component of responsibility is a fairly comprehensive, non-stabilized concept because it incorporates different dimensions of the assessment of enhancement of assessment, but it talks about more inclusive, diverse assessment, different track records, institutional missions, and a more plural recognition of knowledge that we produce and share. So specifically, these are some of the components. The most important one is targeting at more qualitative assessment of the track records and production of research and the production of knowledge, and institutions that can be based on more quantitative indicators, but that these quantitative indicators are more located, oriented to the purpose of this assessment in the institution, in the programs or research itself. And finally, this qualitative assessment that relies on quantitative indicators is clearly interpreted and mediated by peer assessment experts on the subject matter. So this is the reformulation that many of the initiatives that we share that have to do with this triangle between qualitative assessment, located in indicators, and interpretation of peer experts. We incorporate other group of dimensions that strengthen, enrich, and improve the assessment processes. The most important one is open science, highlighting open access to information, publication, also open data, citizen science, participatory science, open software, and a group of dimensions targeting ethics and integrity of assessment processes and data, justice, diversity, and inclusion of the assessment processes, incorporating different stages of careers, incorporating or balancing institutions with different capacities in science and technology and in different regions, among others. As we know, regionally in Latin America and the Caribbean, we've been very dynamic and pioneers, not only in the movement of open access, but also with initiatives, declarations, and national laws or national regulation that regulate open science, open data, and open science. As you remember, just to base this point, the Salvador Declaration 2005 on open access, the Declaration of Panama in 2018 was a pioneer regional initiative on the subject matter. And then we've had, from the first decade of the 21st century, some sort of like a first wave of regulations, Peru, Argentina, and Mexico, for example, and the second movement in the second decade of the 21st century of regulation in Chile on open access and data, and in Colombia in a more comprehensive manner on open science. And as we know, there are a group of countries in the region that don't explicitly have centralized regulations, but as in the case of Brazil, they're very dynamic in the creation of initiatives in some of the components of open science. The picture shows the latest declaration of the Higher University Central American Council joining open science and the necessary reforms in research assessment from institutions and careers to recognize the components of open science more appropriately and award initiatives that already exist for decades in the region and others that are joining in the last few years. From FOLEC, with different bodies with which FOLEC and CLACS have been collaborating as UNESCO Montevideo, La Referencia. I don't want to forget about others, but there's a group of actors and allies with whom we've been working, and we've drafted different regional reports to follow up on the amendment. And what we see in the case of Argentina, one of the bodies of science and technology incorporated to the publications in the journals in Latin American circuits within the first quintiles of scientific assessment. So there's progress in incorporating open science, also qualitative assessment in the promotion to do a curriculum narrated in promotions in career. And also in an incremental fashion, we see the progress of the implementation of open research data, and in all, it's present in all of the invitations that fund researchers that fund their studies with public funds, that deposit this in national repositories and institutional repositories. In the case of Brazil, we have different very interesting initiatives in the subject matter of open science. Particularly, we have the case of IBIG that has promoted or contributed to developing a great Brazil, and this tool of the Brazilian Institute of Information and Science and Technology is a platform that allowed to visualize data and information related with various actors that work in the Brazilian context, unquestionably contributes to reflect the diversity of track record, project, and infrastructure in the country, and also an initiative La Referencia has had together with IBID, which is the creation of a decentralized key of file resources called DARK, that is a project that will provide decentralized infrastructure and solution to governance for the persistent identifiers in the region, operating in an institutional network that conceives them from a perspective of public good in a more inclusive and interoperable approach with the infrastructure of persistent indicators that already exist in the region. We also have another project in Sao Paulo with the support of INFAPESP, looking for indicators that are more responsible for the assessment of scientific publications. And in the case of Colombia, we know Colombia has been very dynamic in the creation of national dialogues for open science and a more integral law of open science. This process is precisely in progress, implementing a very complex and comprehensive law that requires the reformulation of processes, indicators, and criteria of the Colombian assessment system in line with the proposal done from the Ministry of Open Science. We know there's a very interesting initiative to create a national quiz in the case of Colombia. And then there are also institutional initiatives such as Quiz Impact U, designed by the University of Antioquia, that seeks to be a lab or platform reflecting more comprehensive, diverse production of research in this country. Just a second. So in this regard, some of the recommendations is targeting at open infrastructures to strengthen the open and institutional infrastructures. A week ago, FOLEC and CLACSO supported the Declaration of Barcelona, and also together with La Referencia, LIC, and CWTS, we drafted a document, a blog, to understand from the region the implications of the need to have open information on research. And we invite you to read it. It's not only the openness of scientific information, but more diversity and inclusion of different data sources produced in our region and locally to complement a larger spectrum and diversity of information circulating in the region. And in this regard, some initiatives of La Referencia and LIC helping to connect open access with the content in the green way of open access and improve the visibility of research. And the case of Latindex, that has extensive metadata on their journal and assist users to distinguish between journals with a consolidated publisher or practices that are more rigorous in the assessment processes. And open infrastructures of LIC have moved forward in having access to the full text of articles and journals in Diamond Access, improving open information necessary for the production of indicators and assessment that are more diverse and inclusive and representative of production in a region. To close, that's why we participate in global initiatives. As mentioned before, Classio Follet is also an observer of COARA. Dora participates in other initiatives like UNESCO in the region. We also move forward with different research projects on the implementation of reforms and open science regionally, and collaborate with national and interinstitutional initiatives. The proposal seeks to strengthen North and South cooperation. In this regard, all of the working groups, the Research Data Alliance for us seems very good to encourage North-South and South-South collaboration. CLACSO is also participating from the second summit of Open Access Diamond that will be done at the end of this year in Africa. And finally, we believe, and that's what we've been working on the engagement of various actors and institutions in this process of mobilization of the assessment reform in sync with open science principles and values. We call to different intergovernmental actors, higher education, and different stakeholders such as librarians, beneficiaries directly from research activists in open access and open science. Finally, there's an increasing moment for global consensus to generate these reforms. That's why we need to partner and mobilize these changes in favor of open science and the collective benefit of scientific research. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Now we're going to listen to RDA.
Thank you very much, Laura. We are going to hear now about Research Data Alliance. Françoise, you are very committed into RDA. Estás muy activa con Research Data Alliance. It is holding its plenary those days, que tiene su plenary estos mismos días. Over to you.
Thank you, Cécile. Thank you very much for the invitation to talk to you, to tell you a few words about the Research Data Alliance and what we do for research assessment. So the plenary begins tomorrow, so it's a good day to have this meeting for me. I prepared this talk in collaboration with the Secretary General of the RDA, Hilary Anao, and I will tell you in a few minutes where she is currently. So I'm not sure all of you have heard about the RDA before, although it was cited in the two previous talks, but it's just a reminder of what it is. It's the point here is to enable researchers and innovators to share and reuse data across technologies, disciplines, and countries. And the idea is really to build the social and technical bridges to enable that, open data sharing and open reuse of data. It's important to understand that it's both social and technical bridges, and many of the activities have a bit of both aspects. So on the right column, you have the products and the way we work. We have working groups and interest groups, which are tackling different subjects. And there can be many subjects to enable data to be shared. We also have a community of practice in agricultural data, and groups produce outputs which can be reused by the community. We have about more than 14,000 members, a majority coming from the academic world, but not all of them, and organizations can become members of the RDA. So I have been involved in the Research Data Alliance since the very beginning, and for me it's really a unique international forum in which we meet colleagues who have the same concerns and who are really willing to share data and to enable that. So, as I already said, this means we tackle a very large diversity of subjects, and because there are many aspects when you decide that you have to share data. And you will have an idea later in the talk. I will give list of groups we think can bring something in the evaluation of research, and you will see the diversity there. Other diverse aspects of RDA is the participants' profiles and locations, and I will show you that in a minute. Just to tell you that we hold 2 plenaries per year. The one we hold this week and the week after is fully virtual, but there is one which will be hybrid, which is in Costa Rica in November. And I guess you are very welcome if you decide to attend. There was previously another plenary in Costa Rica, but there is a new one. There is coming soon. So the professional titles of the participants, of the members of the RDA, it's very diverse. And you see, we have researchers, we have many librarians, we have people who say they are professors, program managers, people who are more on the IT part, but also students and people from funding agencies and from research organizations. So this is the wealth of the RDA, the diversity of profiles of its members. And it's really when you feel a bit alone, you know, you are in a university and you are tasked to help the university members to share their data. If you feel alone and you are an RDA member, you realize there are many other people doing the same kind of work, and you feel much less alone, I can tell you. So this is the geographical sharing of participants. And you see there are participants from South America. And currently the Secretary General of the RDA, Hilary Anao, is doing a great tour of Latin America and the Caribbean, which is facilitated by La Referencia. So thank you to La Referencia. And you see she has been and will be in a number of countries to discuss the RDA with stakeholders, the local stakeholders. So now the core of the talk is what we do in the RDA about evaluation of research. As I told you, we have this diversity in RDA and this dedicated community. And we really think that there are many places around the world where the evaluation of research and its necessary evolution is being discussed. But we think that the RDA is one of a very appropriate forum to discuss the evolution of evaluation of research as it relates to the open science practices, in particular about data sharing and software, how software is in the open science world. So the reason why we think we are an appropriate forum, it's because of the global reach. And as it was said before, it's very important to take into account the local circumstances when one discusses the evaluation of research. We have this diversity of community profiles, and I think nearly all the members of the RDA have to do with evaluation of research somehow. And we also have a funders forum, we have organizational members, and we have regional members. And all this means that we can cover different aspects of what has to be done to evolve the evaluation of research. So with that in mind, an interest group was created in June 2023 to organize the discussion about the subject, in particular as it relates to data and software. So an interest group in the RDA is created for not with a limited amount of time. Working groups are here for 18 months to produce applicable recommendations. An interest group is here to tackle a subject on the duration. And so we are just beginning somehow. So we have a first output, which is being discussed currently, and there is a link to the draft. So you can have a look and you can provide comments if you wish. The output is a document about RDA role in the evaluation of research landscape. So this led us, when we prepared that, to understand which are different categories of topics which are involved when one think about evaluation of research. And so you have the categories below here. And we organized the document following these categories. With a diversity of RDA topics, we have a diversity of possible contributions. And I will give examples of possible activities of RDA which can contribute to the categories below. And this will be also an illustration of a diversity of topics in which the RDA community is involved in discussion, on which the community discusses. So we have 5 categories, and you will recognize certain things Eva was saying and you heard about in the previous talks. possible metrics and criteria, stakeholder representation, very important to make sure the right people have what they have to say about evaluation of research and its evolution. Research outputs and their relevant properties. We don't want to limit research outputs to publications. Disciplinary aspects, because it's really very important to take into account disciplinary specificities when one discusses evaluation of research. For instance, there are different outputs depending on disciplines. And also, down below, the facilitators, the support activities which contribute to the progression of the evaluation of research ecosystem. So we are here also because we think that the interest group can help the community to have a voice, the global RDA community, the diverse RDA community, have a voice in the big concert of discussions about the evolution of evaluation of research. And they need it because they are all evaluated and very often not with the right criteria with respect to their activities linked to open science. So a few examples which also give you an idea of some of the groups. It's only a subset of the groups. For possible metrics and criteria, we have a group on data usage metrics, another one about sharing rewards and credits. And there is a new working group, a new interest group about understanding and capturing the usage of digital infrastructure, which can also provide thoughts which can be useful about metrics and criteria. As I told you, stakeholder representation is key. And we have the Founders Forum, and they also have an interest group, the Organizational Assembly and the Regional Assembly. And we have a particular interest group, which is extremely important to be here and to be heard when one discusses evaluation of research. It's the early career and colleagues. And we have an interest group, a very active interest group about early career and engagement. We also have a group which is discussing data policy standardization and implementation, which has publishers and other stakeholders involved in the subject. The other examples about research outputs and their relevant properties. We have had groups, we have worked on criteria for FAIR and one about criteria for the FAIR data maturity model, how to develop, they developed criteria which are linked to the FAIR data principle, the FAIR principle for data. And we also have a group which have worked on FAIR principles for research software. Another group, in some disciplines, physical samples and collections are very important, and we have a group working on that. Disciplinary aspects, I already told you, it's extremely important, and we have many disciplinary interests and working groups. We have communities of practice gathering several groups working in a big domain. One very well-established one about agricultural data, and a proposed one about earth and environmental science. And there is a group being discussed which would gather people who play the role of domain ambassadors in the RDA. And it's really a possible focus to discuss evaluation of research with that group when it will be formed. Two examples of the relevant outputs. The data usage metrics recommendation. It's about normalizing data usage practices, and it has its recommendation for the places which distribute data to have better practices so that the usage of data can be tracked, better tracked. So this recommendation has been here for a while, and there is a link to the document. The other group, which is working in things which are linked to criteria and metrics, is sharing rewards and credits with a nice name, Shark. They are working on guidance on open science rewards and incentives for a wide range of different stakeholders. And so you can, the group, there is a link to the group on the page, and you can join the group if you want to be informed of what they are doing. So we also are working in liaison with COARA, and Eva knows that very well. As I said, one of the key objectives is to bring the voice of RDA community to the worldwide discussion of evaluation of research. And so it was quite natural to establish a liaison with COARA, and the initial task we are doing now is to map RDA activities and output with COARA, and then we will put the relevant groups in liaison with the relevant COARA working groups, the relevant RDA groups in liaison with the relevant COARA working groups. So I don't want to take too much of your time, so thank you for your attention. You are really welcome to join the RDA, to join the interest group if you are interested to participate. So there are links allowing to do that. And I have 2 slides about the next plenary here, which will be, as I said, in Costa Rica, just to show you we are global. We have a big event together with CODATA and the World Data System in Brisbane in 2025. And a few slides which you will be able to check about how to get involved as an individual if you are interested. Thank you for your attention. So there are a few slides afterwards, and you can have a look if you want to know better what it means to be an RDA member. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Françoise. Gracias, Françoise. Antes de ir a las cuestiones y preguntas, before the Q&A session, we would love to hear the concluding remarks from Claudia Cordova. So, antes de las preguntas y contestas, vamos a oír a las conclusiones finales.
Muchas gracias, Cecil. Muchas gracias, Eva, Laura, François. Han sido 3 exposiciones excelentes.
Thank you. We've heard 3 great presentations in Eva's. She has given us a global perspective of the declarations that have been made, but has also pointed at something very specifically. She presented COARA, how they've grown, the working groups, in particular one on metrics and responsible indicators that will be very important when actually deploying open science. She talked about the synergy of COARA with GOS and Follett, and all of these changes should be global, and at the same time we cannot advance separately, but everything has to be global. She talked about the 39 plans of action and gave us a call to action. There's a fund of 60,000 euros to participate in the drafting of these plans of action per countries. She presented, and this is something that I checked, the evaluation game where it talks about the role of librarians and talk about these systems will damage the most vulnerable countries, including us. She talked about the motivators that are very good: money, recognition, and laws, and a topic she always mentions about seduction. How do we urge our researchers to do this, not only out of obligation? Laura Robelli from the Latin American Forum on Scientific Research talked about the components of responsible assessment. It has to be qualitative. It should have the qualitative component based on responsible indicators. It should be mediated by peer assessment with an approach to open science, ethics of integrity, justice, equity, and diversity. She also very quickly presented the national initiatives in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, and Chile, and how we need to target to have open infrastructures. She talked about La Referencia and Global Link that are working in connecting the diamond with the green weight. She talked about Latindex and including other sources of information like open air data sites and others. And the last one, which is the first time I hear Francois talking about this interest group in the assessment of research. I think this is precisely the piece that was missing in these 5 categories in which you can participate. For instance, possible metrics and criteria, representation of stakeholders, research outputs, areas of knowledge, and supporting activities for the growth of the ecosystem. I think this is the key so that we can finally do what we want, which is the deployment of open science without incentives. It won't take off as we want to. So these are my conclusions, dear Cecile, and I think we can open the floor to questions. Thank you. So you're all invited to share your screen.
All inviting the speakers to appear on the screen. Hi. Okay. One after the other. There was a question in the box, and I told Gisela, I don't know how to pronounce it, to ask directly RDA. Teníamos una pregunta. Me gustaría saber si hay grupos que estén trabajando.
I'd like to know if there are groups that are working on similar developments based off disciplinary terminology taxonomies to discuss criteria for the drafting of indicators. So
maybe
I don't know if we have an answer for this.
Maybe I can say something about that. I think it's really, really needed because, as I said, I am an astronomer. And for us, having the concept, defining the concept of a new instrument is a research output. And it has to be recognized as a research output. So, and I know it's the same thing. You have specific research outputs in all the disciplines. And so there is an absolute need to do this kind of things. I am not completely sure, Eva will tell us, that it is done currently explicitly in the Coara groups, but I think that the group which is working on metrics has in mind the fact that there is a diversity of outputs. And this is exactly the kind of things on which we think the RDA can bring input, because we have this range of disciplines which are represented.
That's very relevant. I don't know if I can chime in a bit. I think it's very relevant, the disciplinary approaches, and also base those in taxonomies and align them is fantastic. But at this very beginning of the coalition, we wanted to address as much open as possible the common topics for all the disciplines. And then, of course, we have to verticalize the approaches, domain specific, and also in the different stages of the career. It's not the same thing as senior researcher the funding level of research at the institutional level of research. But now we wanted the 13 first working groups are not very much in the specific domains, but we have one in social sciences and another one in medical sciences. And also, you know, Francois, that the data in different domains are completely different. Publications are the same in different domains. They have a number of pages or whatever, but data are absolutely completely different. So this is a challenge for putting on board in the research evaluation.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just checking. I don't see any other questions, so maybe I can put one. Estoy verificando. No tenemos otras cuestiones de momento. We have talked a lot about partnering. It seems to be a key for renewing the research evaluation models and orienting them towards open science. So what is your advice for improving the global collaboration on this topic? Something very concrete, like a first step. What should we do?
I think that one of the challenges is that the landscape there are many elements in the landscape, many initiatives which are dealing with the evaluation of research. So I have the impression that the global initiatives such as COARA, for instance, is really important because it puts people from different places, different organizations from different places together. And in our case, we have this big global community, and we think it's very important because it's the place where you can build a glue, but in the end, I think that there will be national specificities, and eventually in the countries there may be specificities depending on the kind of organization which is doing the evaluation.
Okay, thank you. So alignment is the key, and we can see the input from Claudia, Eva in the chat as a complementary element. Any other reaction on this question, or should I shoot another one for $1 million? Yeah, okay. We are most of us involved into networks, but also institutions or services. In an institution, what would be the first step if I am in charge of a research unit, for example, or a research service? What would be my first step if I want to renew research evaluation framework methodically, but towards open science? What would be the first organizational thing to do? I don't know if you, yes, please just open the microphone and shoot, Laura.
Sí, si puedo responder en parte esta pregunta interesante.
Okay, I'd like to partially respond to this question. First, from the region, I think it's positive given the diversity of initiatives targeting at two guidelines. One is to decentralize the sources of open science assessment, decentralization, nourishing with different existing infrastructures in the region and other global infrastructures that have been mentioning. Enable every institution to have tools to draft local designs in dialogue with all these more global principles of best practices to open science and responsible assessment. So it seems to us this is an interesting key where La Referencia is, of course, the unquestionable partner to mobilize this. And the other one is to interconnect through the federalization all of these common initiatives to nourish a more diverse spectrum of scientific research in institutions. The institutional perspective has to do with the track record of the assessment systems of science, technology, and innovation in a region, so that roads are diverse, but unquestionably, there's a group of practices targeting at different levels, more cultural, the cultural change in the research culture towards open culture, in the changes of policies through specific incentives in the institutions, and rewarding already existing practices, as I mentioned before, in many of the institutions that at present don't have the due recognition. So awarding those that have been doing collaboration practices with society, with other researchers through openness, through open science in various components. From FOLEC, these three dimensions and two principles of scientific information seem essential to us to promote changes. Françoise?
Yes, I think I will insist on the sociological aspect. It's really, I think it's still more difficult to change the research culture than to define the tools to support the change in a sense. So what I would do first would be to speak to people, because the community is doing the evaluations very often, at least in our national system. And the community has to be convinced that evaluation of research has to change. So you can have a top-down requirement coming from the ministry and so on, but you also have to do lots of activities towards the community so that the necessity for the change is fully understood by everybody. Because people are not convinced in general.
So you did a forum.
A forum, and also going into the labs to talk to the lab about the situation they have. I go back to the disciplinary aspects, but I really think there are things which are community-oriented which have to be set up for things to really change. Otherwise, you will have different rules, but the people in the committees will have the same view of evaluation as before, and it will be very difficult to have adoption of the new rules, real adoption.
Eva, piensas lo mismo, ¿no?
I just want to echo what Francois already said. And I think I remember that when I was the chair of the Open Science Policy Platform, I said that implementing open science in institutions, in countries, in whatever is your jurisdiction, it is, darling, we need to talk initiative. And you know, when somebody says to you, darling, we need to talk, something is going to change. You don't know if you're going to change curtains of the living room or you're going to get divorced, but something is going to change. So we have to go, knock at the door of the vice chancellor, knock at the door of the council of the city, or whoever it is in charge of the change. In our case, in the case of Francois, that France has also an intermediate body, the intermediate evaluation agency, and say, darling, we need to talk. This community. It's not something that we can do it overnight, but it has to be done. It's not negotiable. Science is not sustainable this way. We cannot keep promoting a very old-fashioned system when we can do it better. We have in our hands artificial intelligence, community, and the researchers and the citizens that they pay and they make the science. This is the darling, we need to talk. That will be my last message.
And thank you for the participants in the chat also, because we do not forget the African Open Science Platform too. Claudia, ¿quieres añadir algo?
Sí, gracias, Cecil. Yo quería mencionar, bueno,
I wanted to mention I work for CONCITEC, which is the leading entity of science and technology in Peru. And we are the ones in charge of doing research assessment. So I belong to both worlds at this moment. And we're very much aware that a way of changing the assessment system, we play a fundamental role. All of the bodies that do research assessment, that define what researchers are in what level, which ones are rewarded or not, what are the output of research that we are looking for. We're aware that's what's important and that will allow us to change. But we need the collaboration from all of you as well. For instance, this group that I've seen in RDA that is working on the drafting of metrics, this seems critical to me because what CONCITEC is proposing, if you think, I'm thinking about it in English. If you're thinking about a group of indicators that are responsible, that are qualitative based on quantitative, but that are not so subjective, with the approval of the communities of the areas of knowledge, then we change the model. So there's a commitment, and we have some areas that are working on the differentiation in assessment, as we see in Pilar Rico's and Lars Sonora book of the landscape in Latin America. We rate researchers in all areas and knowledge the same way, but we're working on making a separation because we cannot assess all of the areas of knowledge with the same rule, all of the researchers. So we're following with close attention the way in which Anika is assessing now, which is different. We're also paying a lot of attention to these working groups of RDA. Actually, we had the visit of Hillary Hanno that was very fruitful. It was very interesting with researchers and decision makers that we have at CONCITEC to work on this change. We need to work together, and as Eva says, it has to be global. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you. We have information in the chat, and most likely my last question, but if there are others, please put it in the chat. My question to you is, if you want to share, what is your biggest success, even if it seems a very small step, but that it has value added, or your deepest failure or repentment when we have the ideal horizon of opening science and assessment? If you have an anecdote for us.
Por favor, Eva, que los casos concretos no se hacen
Eva?
así fácilmente, ¿no?
I can't just share my experience with when my institution joined COARA with the previous rector. This is something very dangerous also, that the institution change the direction and can change the direction of the policies. That's an important thing. But my argument there to make something happen was saying, no, everybody is signing this agreement, because something that the rectors and the policymakers like is who is in the boat. If in the boat they are the good ones, I want to be in the boat. If in the boat they are just the hippie ones and the ones that they are not interested. So it makes a difference when you say everybody is in there. I think it's important. It's very difficult for the institutions or for the Latin American countries who is going to be the first. But for example, I know what happened in Chile, that as soon as the ANID, the Agency of Research Funding, joined coalition, other universities want to be on board. So it's important that you target institutions that they can be flagships of the whole initiative. That's my naive advice.
Anybody else? Yes, Françoise, you witnessed successes and failures. So.
Yes, I think that, you know, it can be very difficult to make, Poara is asking the participants, the members, to provide a plan, a multi-annual plan about how they will implement the change. And I think it's really difficult to build this kind of plan. And I can say that in the national chapters, it can be a very useful place to discuss these things with in mind the national conditions, the specifics. And it's really the kind of thing, it's very difficult to do this kind of exercise locally for your own organization. But again, the power of a community can help you to do it. But I'm not saying it's a failure, but I'm just saying that it's very, very, very difficult to understand how to implement the change.
So we are coming to the end of it. I don't know if you have any other input to provide now, or if we are going to conclude. I leave you some seconds to think about it. This is super hot questions. But, well, the general feeling is that after this webinar, I hope everyone can find some examples or could have time to take the links or ideas, collect them and put them into your own strategy. It can be your service or your research unit strategy. It can be your national or regional strategy. This is not difficult to find something that you spot that you find interesting and say, I can adapt and remix this for me, because we are hearing such examples. We are being invited to join or just to follow, because it's everything in the open. Follow the outputs and follow the results of what others are doing for alignment, for giving a space for discussion. So maybe that can be a first step, as do we want to have in our unit, in our institution, in our country, such a path ahead of us? If yes, then maybe the first thing is to phone your neighbor or to send an email or to knock at the door of your rector to say, hello, darling, I will try this personally. Darling, we need to talk. Maybe that was the best. We can find, we are closing now, only 3 minutes left. I'm just checking on the chat, but if we had enough material to think about for the coming days, weeks, months, years also, that would be very good. Denise and Andrea, thank you for having us today on this platform. Thank you to the translation team. Thank you to La Referencia and LIBER for organizing this. Lautaro, Joan, Rosie, Stella, Martina, everyone here. I can see your hand, Janice, and I will just shut my microphone so you can say goodbye properly.
No, thank you all for attending this webinar. It was, again, a very pleasant experience to talk with the Latin American colleagues and, share the experiences. I think that we are becoming more wise after this kind of meetings, remote meetings. And I would like also to give, the floor to Andrea to give to tell the final word.
Gracias, Janice. No, gracias a todas
Thank
las...
you, and thanks to all of our colleagues. It's a big pleasure, and I'm very proud to be here. For everyone that participated, hopefully we can have these very valuable meetings where we can exchange different perspectives. It's the only way in which we're going to find collaborative solutions regionally and internationally. Big hug to everyone, and thank you for this wonderful space.